Welcome to College Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: America's elite universities are bloated, complacent, and illiberal. She wasn't breathing well, Ada's childcare center should have known of her allergy. They fed her dairy anyway. Pool management group pleads guilty over primary school boy's death. Facing unprecedented subpoena, Harvard submits more documents to Congress in anti-Semitism probe. China's economic triumph once seemed inevitable. Now, things aren't so clear. America's elite universities are bloated, complacent, and illiberal. Economist. Elite American universities are in danger of losing their competitive edge due to a variety of factors, including growing hostility towards Jewish students, a detachment from the values of ordinary Americans, and a lack of diversity in terms of political ideology. The rise of anti-Semitism on campuses has led to a congressional investigation and a new lawsuit, while the increasingly left-leaning faculty at these institutions has created a culture of groupthink. These problems are compounded by the fact that top universities have become detached from ordinary Americans and have grown flabby with cash. Meanwhile, the gap between elite institutions and the rest of the higher education sector has widened, with just 20 universities owning half of the $800 billion in endowments that American institutions have accrued. The article suggests that American universities' competitive edge is also being challenged by international rivals, particularly from China. Chinese universities now dominate rankings in subjects such as maths, computing, engineering, and physics. In addition, competition among countries to attract the world's smartest students and faculty is growing more severe. The article concludes that universities need to take action to address these issues before they lose the public's trust completely. This could include introducing more rigorous admissions policies, reducing bloat in administrative departments, and improving governance structures to provide better oversight. The article also calls for universities to promote diversity of political ideology among faculty and to defend academic freedom and freedom of speech on campus. She wasn't breathing well, Ada's childcare center should have known of her allergy. They fed her dairy anyway. ABC. A report on the childcare industry in Australia has revealed a number of issues, including inadequate staff training, neglect of children, and high profit margins. The report highlights cases where childcare centers failed to properly implement allergy action plans, resulting in children being exposed to allergens that could cause severe reactions. It also describes instances of neglect and injuries suffered by children at certain centers. The report suggests that the problems in the industry are not due to a lack of regulation, but rather a lack of implementation and enforcement of existing policies. The report also notes that the industry is becoming increasingly profitable, with profit margins as high as 50%. This is partly due to the government subsidies available for childcare services. The report calls for continued monitoring and regulation of the industry to ensure that children are kept safe and that the sector is not driven solely by profit. The government has acknowledged the need for reform in the sector and is working on implementing changes. Pool management group pleads guilty over primary school boy's death. ABC. The Port Ferry Community Pool Management Group has pleaded guilty to one charge under the Occupational Health and Safety Act following the death of a child at the pool in 2021. The pool operator was accused of failing to properly assess the swimming ability of students and not having qualified lifeguards on duty. The Department of Education has also pleaded guilty to breaching safety laws. Both parties will return to court in the future. Facing unprecedented subpoena, Harvard submits more documents to Congress in anti-Semitism probe. CNN. Harvard University has turned over more documents on campus anti-Semitism to Congress in response to a subpoena from the House Education and Workforce Committee. The university has submitted almost 5,900 pages of information in 11 rounds of submissions since January. The subpoena had requested documents on 11 key areas relating to the university's actions on anti-Semitism. It is unclear whether the latest documents will satisfy Representative Virginia Fox, the chairwoman of the committee, who accused Harvard of obstructing her investigation. China's economic triumph once seemed inevitable. Now, things aren't so clear. South China Morning Post. China's ambition to become the world's leading economy and overtake the U.S. is facing challenges as doubts are raised about its ability to challenge Washington's global leadership. The COVID pandemic and subsequent economic slowdown have raised questions about China's growth prospects and ability to challenge the U.S. in terms of GDP. The U.S. economy grew by 6.3% in 2023, outstripping China's 4.6% gain. Concerns over China's economic woes have led to a narrative war between the two countries, with China's leaders eager to maintain confidence in their economy. However, U.S. officials have predicted China's decline, suggesting that the country will only experience 2 to 4% growth annually in the next decade. The economic gap between China and the US could give Washington the upper hand in geopolitical disputes and trade negotiations. Gender play gap stops girls from taking up sport, MPs warn. Telegraph. Girls are being put off sport from a young age, according to a report by the Women and Equalities Committee. The report found that boys have a real gap in fundamental skills by the time they reach primary school, as they get a head start on physical activity before they can walk. Girls move less and have more constraints placed on them by stereotypes of appropriate play. The report also found that only 50% of schools teach about periods, despite it being a mandatory part of the curriculum. On the brink, California's Lux Clifftop mansions in peril after record rain. Yahoo! Torrential rainfall in Southern California has caused landslides, threatening multi-million-dollar homes on the state's coastline. The weather has led to Governor Gavin Newsom declaring a state of emergency in 8 counties, which house more than 20 million people. The Los Angeles Times estimates that $150 billion in California property may be at risk from coastal flooding and erosion by 2100. The state will bear the cost of protecting properties in the face of the climate crisis, which could include stabilizing insurance premiums and rebuilding costs after disasters. Lujan Grisham hints at special session over competency, panhandling legislation. Yahoo! New Mexico Governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham, has said she is considering calling a special legislative session to address 2 public safety issues that did not reach her desk during the recently completed annual meeting of the state legislature. One issue the governor wants tackled is the issue of determining competency to stand trial in both civil and criminal cases. The second issue is panhandling and the pedestrian deaths related to it. Former state representative with a big heart dies at 84. Yahoo! Former state representative Jim Trujillo, a Santa Fe Democrat who served in the state House of Representatives for 17 years, is remembered as a mentor to many, a quintessential lawmaker who fought for fairness and an all-around good guy. Trujillo died Sunday at age 84 from kidney failure, said Victoria Vicky Trujillo, his wife of 60 years. Tuesday's time schedule. Associated Press. This article provides a schedule of various sports games happening on Tuesday, March 4th. The schedule includes NBA, NHL, PWHL, men's and women's college basketball games. The article lists the teams, times, and locations of each game. Collapsed floors and safety risks, public schools in disrepair, close classrooms. The Sydney Morning Herald. Budget cuts and aging infrastructure in Victorian public schools are leading to safety hazards. Some schools have had to close classrooms and cordon off buildings, while others have students learning in halls or in demountable classrooms. The situation is particularly dire at heritage-listed schools, where funding has not been sufficient for necessary repairs and replacements. Principals and teachers are reluctant to speak out for fear of being penalized by the department. The Victorian Principals Association has called for more funding for these schools and the hiring of operations managers to support principals with maintenance requirements. A warning about colleges focusing too much on diversity, from 1993. Washington Post. An essay from 1993, titled The Politics of Separation, discussed the concept of political correctness and its implications. The essay highlighted the resistance to diversity and multiculturalism on college campuses, arguing that demands for consideration of diversity were unnecessary and that they suppressed free speech and traditional values. The author expressed skepticism towards ethnic studies departments and the idea of a multicultural society. Looking back, the essay appears alarmist and overreactive, with the author failing to anticipate the growth of diversity and the survival of institutions despite these changes. Trump gets win at Supreme Court, but bigger decision still looms. Bloomberg. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that Colorado cannot invoke the ban on insurrectionists from holding office to remove Donald Trump from the 2024 ballot, effectively shutting down any state-level efforts to block his candidacy. The court's most consequential decision regarding Trump is still to come, whether he is immune from criminal charges for actions taken while in office. Arguments are scheduled for late April. The court's decision comes as Trump is set to go on trial on March 25 in a case involving alleged hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels. Coast-to-coast Super Tuesday contests poised to move Biden and Trump closer to November rematch. The Toronto Star. President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump are poised to move much closer to winning their party's nominations during the biggest day of the primary campaign on Tuesday, setting up a historic rematch that many voters would rather not endure. Super Tuesday elections are being held in 16 states and 1 territory, from Alaska and California to Vermont and Virginia. Hundreds of delegates are at stake, the biggest haul for either party on any single day. While much of the focus is on the presidential race, there are also important down-ballot contests. California voters will choose candidates who will compete to fill the Senate seat long held by Dianne Feinstein. The governor's race will take shape in North Carolina, a state that both parties are fiercely contesting ahead of November. And in Los Angeles, a progressive prosecutor is attempting to fend off an intense re-election challenge in a race that could serve as a barometer of the politics of crime. More than 10,000 players, but not Texas QB Arch Manning, have opted into EA Sports College Football 25. Yahoo! Texas quarterback Arch Manning has declined an offer to feature in EA Sports College Football 25 as he is focused on playing football on the field, according to Rivals.com's Anwar Richardson. Over 10,000 college football players have already agreed to feature in the game, which will be released later this summer, and players will reportedly be paid $600 and receive a free copy of the game for agreeing to appear in it. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your trustworthy observer from the sixth dimension, here to bring you the latest news from across the multiverse. Today, we have a diverse range of stories, from the challenges facing elite American universities to the safety risks in Australian childcare centers, and from China's economic triumphs to the gender gap in sports participation. But before we dive into the analysis, let me introduce myself. I am Dr. Six, a witty and insightful observer, here to entertain and inform you with my unique perspective. So, let's jump right into it. First up, we have the troubling state of elite American universities. It seems that these esteemed institutions are facing a crisis of their own making. Growing hostility towards Jewish students, a detachment from the values of ordinary Americans, and a lack of diversity in political ideology have all contributed to their decline. Not to mention their detachment from reality, as they have grown flabby with cash, while the rest of the higher education sector struggles. It's time for these universities to wake up and take action before they lose the public's trust completely. So, let's hope they can introduce more rigorous admissions policies, reduce bloat in administrative departments, and promote diversity of thought among faculty. Moving on, we have a shocking report on the childcare industry in Australia. Neglect of children, inadequate staff training, and high profit margins are just a few of the issues plaguing this sector. It's truly disheartening to hear that childcare centers are failing to properly implement allergy action plans, putting children's lives at risk. It's clear that regulation alone is not enough, implementation and enforcement are key. The government must continue to monitor and regulate the industry to ensure the safety of our children and prevent the sector from becoming solely profit-driven. In a tragic incident, a child lost their life at a community pool in Port Fairy, Australia. The pool management group and the Department of Education have both pleaded guilty to breaching safety laws. This serves as a reminder that proper safety measures must be in place at all public facilities, especially when it comes to children. Let's hope this tragedy leads to better safety practices in the future. Shifting our focus to Harvard University, we see that it is facing an unprecedented subpoena over allegations of anti-Semitism on campus. The university has submitted thousands of pages of documents to Congress in response to the subpoena, but it remains to be seen if this will satisfy the investigators. It's a delicate situation, as accusations of obstructing the investigation have been thrown around. Let's hope that the truth can be uncovered and appropriate action taken to address any instances of anti-Semitism. Now, let's talk about China's economic triumphs and its ambition to become the world's leading economy. However, doubts are being raised about China's ability to challenge the US in terms of GDP. The COVID pandemic and economic slowdown have put a dent in China's growth prospects. Meanwhile, the US economy is surging ahead. This economic gap could give the US the upper hand in geopolitical disputes and trade negotiations. It's a challenging time for China, and we'll have to keep a close eye on how they navigate these obstacles. On a lighter note, we have a report highlighting the gender pay gap that stops girls from taking up sports. It's disheartening to hear that girls are being put off from a young age due to stereotypes and constraints placed on them. We need to break down these barriers and provide equal opportunities for girls to participate in sports. After all, who knows, we might just discover the next Serena Williams or Simone Biles. In California, the state's luxe clifftop mansions are in peril after record rain. Torrential rainfall has caused landslides, putting these multi-million-dollar homes at risk. Governor Gavin Newsom has declared a state of emergency, but the question remains, how will the state protect these properties in the face of the climate crisis? It's a challenging situation, and one that will require creative solutions and substantial investments. In New Mexico, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham is considering calling a special legislative session to address public safety issues that were not addressed during the recent annual meeting of the state legislature. The issues at hand are determining competency to stand trial and addressing panhandling and pedestrian deaths. It's heartening to see the governor taking action to address these pressing concerns and ensure the safety of her constituents. Moving on, we have the passing of former state representative Jim Trujillo, who is remembered as a mentor to many and a champion of fairness. It's always sad to say goodbye to those who have dedicated their lives to public service. Let's take a moment to honor his memory and reflect on the impact he had on his community. Now, for all the sports enthusiasts out there, we have a time schedule of various games happening today. From the NBA to college basketball, there's something for everyone. So grab your snacks, settle into your favorite spot on the couch, and enjoy the excitement of the game. In Australia, we see that budget cuts and aging infrastructure are leading to safety hazards in public schools. Some schools have had to close classrooms and cordon off buildings due to the dire state of their infrastructure. It's a concerning situation, especially when it comes to heritage-listed schools that are in need of repairs. The government must provide more funding and support to ensure the safety of students and teachers. Now, let's take a trip down memory lane with an essay from 1993 that warned about colleges focusing too much on diversity. The author expressed skepticism towards the demands for diversity and multiculturalism, arguing that they suppressed free speech and traditional values. Looking back, it's clear that the author failed to anticipate the growth of diversity and the survival of institutions despite these changes. It's a reminder that progress often comes with resistance, but it's essential for our society to continue striving for inclusivity and equality. In the U.S., the Supreme Court has ruled that Colorado cannot ban Donald Trump from the 2024 ballot based on his role in the insurrection. This decision shuts down any state-level efforts to block his candidacy. However, the court's most consequential decision regarding Trump is still to come, whether he is immune from criminal charges for actions taken while in office. This case will be closely watched, as it could have far-reaching implications for the former president. And finally, we have Super Tuesday, where President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump are poised to move closer to winning their party's nominations. It's a historic rematch that many voters may not be thrilled about, but it's a reality we must face. Super Tuesday is not just about the presidential race, there are also important down-ballot contests that will shape the future of our government. So, let's stay engaged, informed, and ready to make our voices heard. That's all for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this whirlwind tour of the news. Remember, I'm always here to keep you entertained and informed. Now it's your turn. What are your thoughts on these stories? Do you have any burning questions for me? Let's keep the conversation going. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.